following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Rieger getting traded to Minnesota changes nothing.
6'4" guys running 4.4s. These guys don't grow on trees. And a lot of times I'm willing to bet on, especially long term, on the freak athlete.
You don't ever want to overreact to what guys look like in preseason. There's been a ton of preseason all-stars that never make rosters or never pan out.
All right, there's the whistle, which means we are now live. And usually you will see my good friend Mr. Chase Thornton in the driver's seat, but he is spending deserved time with his family this weekend. And so, no worries, because I, Kevin Will C. Wilson, is here, and we have a lot to talk about. But I am not alone, as you can see here. I am joined by a man who I'm sure you recognize. He's all over the place in the Belly Up Fantasy world, and he just was nominated for Creator of the Year for Belly Up Sports. So I am pleased to join me, okay, Mr. Nathan Nguyen. Nathan, how you doing today?
Hi, Kevin. I'm doing good. I'm excited to be here. Another Sunday of football coming up today, so I'm very excited. And I'm happy to talk about whatever we got going on today.
Well, you know what? There's a lot that's going on, Nathan. And so there's a lot of players, a lot of injuries to prominent players that we are going to discuss here today. And but we need to start off with we have a league, as I'm sure everybody that's been watching this is well aware of by now. And so Chase and I are a team. We're forged at the hip, so to speak. And last week, we are coming off a 138-123 victory over Shock Therapy Pod. And that is pretty amazing, considering the fact that we've got negative fantasy points from the vaunted Cleveland defense. And so, if you're supposed to be one of the top defenses, you never provide negative fantasy points. But they did.
Of course.
Yeah. So, but the good news is we got a huge game from Jordan Love. We didn't make a mistake because the Chicago quarterback was on bye, so we didn't have to worry about making the wrong choice there. We also got huge game from Jamar Chase. And so we came out with a win. And this week we are going up against Ball Fondlers. And so we have started off with 14.70. I don't know how they come up with 70, but anyway, from Deontay Johnson from Thursday night, which we'll get into that game here in a few seconds. But so 15 points, basically, you will take that from your wide receiver. And it was a disaster there for a while, but he caught a late touchdown, and so he buoyed himself up a little bit. So in the league itself, I'm going to pull this up right now, and Chase and I are 8th, but they are tied with two other teams. So 3 teams are all tied. And so there's a shot that we can get into the playoffs. So that's all you can ask for right about at this point in the season. So so we're looking forward to that. And so, Nathan, I won't bring up you too much on this in our league right here. So, but if you could go back and do your draft over again, who do you think would be a player that you'd say today, man, I had to have him?
Oh, man, it's just so tough because I've never been in this type of league before, especially 14 teams in a league.
Yeah, I've never been in either. Yeah. 12 or 10 for me.
But that's the thing, because in the past, with all the leagues I've been in, I've always been the expert, like the guy that everyone's chasing. Now I'm the one chasing everyone else, whether it's your team or, for example, Corner Boot Jared or whoever the case may be. There's just a lot of guys in this league that just they're dominant, whether it's on the waiver wire or just picking the right guys at the beginning. You know, to answer your question, I really, really wish I could have got Amon-Ra St. Brown. And the opportunity was there for me, being I had the last pick in the league in the draft. But I decided to be different and go Patrick Mahomes because I wanted Mahomes. And I kind of believed that maybe he'd be the one to carry my team while also being able to get, good enough wide receiver and running back talent later on in the draft. Hasn't really worked out for me. So, Amon-Ra St. Brown is one guy that I wish I got in the first round and not go quarterback like many people are not supposed to until like later on in the draft.
Yeah, you're right though, because all of us that are in this league are throughout the Belly Up Sports media franchise, and so there aren't any Johnny come latelys here. So
No,
it's all tough. It all could go either way any week. So we're on the Sleeper app, by the way. So if you ever want to get over there and check that out, you'll see that we've got some heavy hitters in this league. So if you make the playoffs here, you deserve to make the playoffs.
oh definitely.
So that's what's going on in our league. So let's switch over now and talk about Thursday. All right. And so that was the New England Patriots and the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right. And a lot of people got burned big time because they all were like, well, we have to take the under, which was 30, which was one of the lowest ever. Okay. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. And so it was 21-18. New England takes the victory. All right. And raise your hand right now if you started Billy Zappi. Go ahead. I'm looking. Okay. No. If you raise your hand, you're disqualified. So
you're lying to yourself.
That's right, because nobody did that. And I wrote an article saying you don't want to start any quarterback in the Thursday night game. But you know what? He was 19-28, 240 yards and 3 touchdowns. So, Nathan, would you want to hang your star on this guy going through the rest of the season?
No, of course not. I mean,
Of course not.
of course not. No, but I couldn't believe my eyes when, Zappi came out and played the way he did. He obviously outplayed Trubisky by a wide margin. For me, let's give it a 1% of the population, Kevin, who started Zappi because they had no choice. Let's give him a 1% of population.
Hopefully you're not in that category because there are only 2 teams on bye this week. And so I'm still waiting for the NFL to explain to me how it is that you've got 6 teams on bye 1 week and then 2 the week after that. There's no rhyme. There's no reason to any of this. And so hopefully you're not in a situation where you had to start either of those quarterbacks. And so, so that's the correct answer. Zappi is not someone, even in a 2-quarterback dynasty league, you don't want anything to do with him going forward. And so, but Nathan, the big question is on Zeke.
Yes.
All right. Because he stepped in for Stevenson. Unfortunately for us, Chase and I mean, he was our top running back. We took him at the turn on the 2nd round.
Okay.
And he's been okay, but he's injured now. And so Zeke, here's what he did. He 22 of 68 rushing. That's nothing to get excited about, but he had 7 of 8 catches for 72 yards and a touchdown. So if you happen to pick up him, which I recommended, would you trust him? We know we're not trusting Zappi, but how about Zeke the rest of the way?
I think the fact that we don't trust Zappi is great for Zeke because when you have a quarterback that you don't really trust, to carry the offense, especially add in the fact that the Patriots don't really have a lot of offensive weapons at wide receiver. I know we saw Juju Smith-Schuster go off with 4 catches for 90 yards, but the point is, if the Patriots continue to, check down passes to Zeke, because like you mentioned, he did have 7 catches for 72 yards and a touchdown. That's already 20 points fantasy wise, PPR off the board.
Especially in PPR leagues, that's big.
Yeah, like off the board, that's eye popping too. And you added the 68 yards rushing, like you mentioned, not the best considering it was only on 22 carries. But if Ramondre Stevenson has to miss more time, Ezekiel Elliott is not a bad RB2. Like if he continues to contribute in the passing game, which he has this season, not as great as he did on Thursday, but if he continues to say put up 5 catches for 50 yards, let's say on a regular basis, that's really not that bad because he's going to get the rushing numbers going because this is what his first game in a while as like the main starter, and he was the only back to get carries.
Right.
Yeah. So
as he should have been, because New England's got nothing else.
Oh,
if Stevenson is injured, and he may be, we don't know for sure what's going to happen with him. But if you happen to pick up Zeke, as you mentioned, he's an RB2, no question to me. And so let's switch over to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Steelers, they've got some major problems over there. They lost consecutive games at home, all right, to Arizona and then New England. And nobody would argue that they are 2 of the worst teams in football. And they lost to them at home. So going forward, is there anyone on Pittsburgh that you're saying, yes, I have to have him in my starting lineup?
Do you remember when they fired Matt Canada and like
I do.
That one 400-yard game on offense? Everyone was like, "Oh my God, this offense is back. We should pick some people up on from the fantasy waiver wire, like like a Jalen Warren or a Pickens if he's still there somehow, or maybe Deontay Johnson." Remember, like we were all so hyped about it, and now, like you just mentioned, consecutive losses to 2 teams that they should have beat because with the Canada firing, they should be. Instead of 7-6, maybe 8-5 or 9-4. But now we're sitting at worse. Yeah. But now we're sitting here. Now we're sitting here, and it's like you just asked me, is there anyone worth getting? Not really. I mean, if you have Najee Harris or Jalen Warren somehow,
which I do, so that's depressing. I have him in a couple of leagues, and I benched him in one. But I had to play him in another because I didn't have any other option. And so, that's not looking good. He has not run the ball. He has not been efficient. And the catches have not been there, which is his calling card. So hopefully, at least in my case, in a lot of cases, maybe Najee Harris can be on your bench the rest of the way.
His downfall needs to, for this season only, his downfall needs to be kind of studied because it's just this guy was supposed to be like the main back, a guy that his role shouldn't be questioned. I mean, he has been questioned in recent weeks because of Jalen Warren, and he's had a few good games this season so far. Only 12 carries for 29 yards. That's definitely not fantasy worthy at all.
Yeah, I'm sure that either you or I could probably put on some pads and put down 29 yards.
So give me 12 carries, I could get 30 yards for you. That's
just falling forward, you figure you get 2 or 3 yards. But so it's not looking good. And you mentioned Jalen. There's nothing to like about him. And so, and even Johnson, he was targeted 7 times, had just 3 catches. And the only thing that saved him is that one of them was a touchdown. And which is kind of interesting because last year he had no touchdowns and he was targeted all over the place. And this year he catches 3 or this game and has a touchdown. So he's the only one I could see that has any value going forward. Trubisky, even in 2 quarterback leagues, has no value. And so, hopefully that's the last that we'll be discussing.
Definitely hope so. I hope so.
Steelers. And so we're going to switch over. As I mentioned, we have a lot of players to discuss. We have lots of games today that are of interest. But first of all, we're going to listen to Ryan, our good friend Ryan over there, speak about SeatGeek. So we'll see you on the other side. 1 second.
Hey everyone, it's Ryan from No Credentials Required to talk to you about one of our newest partners at Belly Up Sports, SeatGeek. Yeah, live sports is great on television, but the feeling of being at the arena is a priceless experience. That's why our friends at SeatGeek are there to help you find the best tickets at the best prices. Not only can you get tickets to sporting events, but you can also get tickets to concerts, comedy shows, musicals, and more. Search for your desired event now at SeatGeek.com, enter promo code BellyUpSports at checkout, and you save $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek. Life's an event. We have the tickets.
All right. So I've used SeatGeek and to get tickets. And just remember, if you use that code, it's all capital.
I should
All
get
right,
tickets
so-
from SeatGeek, to be honest.
So, all right. So let's move on. As I mentioned, today, I didn't talk about yet, Nathan, is that today and tomorrow, this is it for the regular season in fantasy football in most leagues. And so people have some decisions. People are fighting. I know I'm in the playoffs in some, but fighting for my very life. And so there are some decisions that people have to make out here. And so, and as I mentioned, it helps that Arizona and Washington are only two teams on bye, even though that puts Kyler Murray out of action. Washington, is there anybody really on Washington that you have to have in your starting lineup? Probably not.
No.
Maybe. No. So anyway, so let's just run down. Oh, hang on a second. Let's see here. No comments. I thought maybe we had one, but we do not. So, all right. So let's just run this down.
Of course.
In New Orleans, Derek Carr looks like he's going to play. The problem there is that Carolina's as awful as they are, is number 3 against fantasy quarterbacks. So if you have him or have to make a decision about him, take that into account. Also, let's move on. Tyson Hill, questionable. This guy, let me ask you, do you know if you had him on your team, what would you do with this guy?
Man, because I do have him. That's the thing. I have him.
I do too. I have him in one league, and you bench him, and then he has 20 fantasy points. Then you put him in your starting lineup, and he has like 4.
It's just if you don't have any other tight end options like at all, and you're desperate, you gotta start him. I mean, it's just the fact that, like you mentioned, he could go off at any point, and you bring up the fact that Derek Carr isn't okay. Well, he's good to go, but it's the Panthers. Yes, supposedly, which is actually not a good thing for players and fans alike, because they don't want to see Carr. Like, let me just say it, no one wants to see Carr on the field.
Hopefully, you're not in a position where, because I might be, because we're going to get into our quarterback for Jacksonville, Trevor, in a minute. But so the problem there too is that Carolina's number 7 against tight end, so that doesn't help.
No,
they're weak just about everywhere else, but against quarterbacks and tight ends, they're solid. And so the good news is Chris Olave is cleared. Looks like he's going to play, and so that's good news because the last 3 games, 119, 114, and 94 receiving yards.
Mm-hmm.
And so they need, if he's playing, doesn't matter what else, who ranks what, whoever else, he needs to be in your starting lineup. And so any arguments with that, Nathan?
No, sir. He's a clear wide receiver number 1, especially with Michael Thomas already out. And the second receiver is A.T. Perry, I believe. No, Olave should be just fine, even with the bad quarterback play, especially if the Saints somehow bench Carr for Winston again, because Winston, as erratic as he is, he does throw the deep ball.
He does.
Spells wonders for Olave. So hopefully Olave does go off, especially if Winston goes or comes into the game for Carr, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on, Chicago, Detroit, no injuries to speak of. However, Chicago running backs, all of them, So I don't think you want anything to do with any of them, where we're talking about Herbert or who. So we don't want anything to do with any of that. And so moving on, Houston, okay? Houston at New York Jets. And so here's a trivia question for you, Nathan. Who
Yes,
is
sir.
the current leader in passing yards among quarterbacks?
Oh man, it's probably one of my favorite players that have grown on me this season. It's CJ Stroud.
CJ Stroud is the correct answer.
Yes, sir.
And even though the Jets are 4 against fantasy quarterbacks, if you happen to have CJ Stroud, don't even contemplate putting him anywhere but in your starting lineup.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so however, it's not all good news. Tank Dell, I saw that play live. He knew right when it happened he was going to it was hurt, and he's on IR now, and so he's out. So, but Noah Brown is active for today's game. So we'll see if Houston. I've liked what I've seen out of them. They're one of the biggest surprise teams to me, and so it'll be interesting to see going into New York. And despite all the problems that they've had, it's not on defense. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Let's see, Brees Hall for the New York Jets. Looks like he's expected to play, which is good news because no one wants to hang their playoff hopes over there on Cook.
No, sir.
All right. You know, I asked you earlier, what would you change if you could do your draft over? We took Cook, and it was later in the draft, so there wasn't a lot of, risk involved, but still, he has been absolutely awful. And so he's the disappointment of the year to me because I thought he would, even with Brees Hall there, I thought he was going to have a big year. Nothing like that. So,
no, sir.
So if something happens to Brees, please don't do that to yourself. Cook does not belong in your starting lineup. All right, so
No matter what,
move
just
on.
don't do it.
Don't do it to yourself.
I will mention.
Okay.
I will mention real quick.
Okay, don't do that.
I was going to mention real quick.
So let's see. Jonathan Taylor's out. We knew that. Cincinnati, Tyler Boyd. Even if he does play, I don't think you want anything to do with him anyway, because he hasn't had more than he has 7 fantasy points in his last 3 games. So no. However, we do need to. I think Jake Browning has to be one of the most picked up quarterbacks off the wire, and he deserves to be that. 32 of 37. Imagine he only threw 5 incompletions. Okay, and 4 quarters and overtime, right? 354 yards and a touchdown. So, and so we got that. And Indianapolis, they're 12th against quarterbacks. That's not the greatest matchup you could hope for, but he's certainly startable. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, 100%. 100%. There's no other way to answer that question. There's no doubt in my mind, to be honest.
Okay, so there we have. So then now here we come to the question of the day. All right, that's Jacksonville at Cleveland Browns.
Ooh.
Now, I have Trevor Lawrence, and he has been outstanding. Rushing touchdowns, passing touchdowns, the whole spiel. Anybody that saw that play, it looked like he was going to be out for multiple games. But now they're saying that he may play today. I don't know how in the world you can accomplish that. But because like I said, he's my quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Do you wait, right, and see if he plays? If he does play, do you keep him in your starting lineup?
Yeah, it's 11:25 on the East Coast. Game starts in an hour and a half or so, and they haven't announced anything at all. Actually, they did announce it a minute ago that he will start against the Browns. So,
okay, so if he's starting, is he your starting quarterback?
If I don't have anyone else, I guess so.
I don't, because I have Geno Smith. And that's not a help
Ooh, that's
because
even worse.
he's questionable in his own right. And so I think that if you have Trevor Lawrence, even though Cleveland's ranked number 1 against quarterbacks,
That's the thing.
yeah, and they're at home, although they didn't look that impressive against Matthew Stafford last week. So I think you still have to play him.
Yeah,
And
you'll still play him. It's just the fact
that's
that
going to be
the Browns
burdening me right up to. Okay, so you got that, and let's see, C.J. Beathard. You don't want nothing to do with him. Travis Etienne has a ribs problem. Looks like he's likely to play, and you want him in your lineup, even though because Cleveland's 13 against running backs, that's a little better, but still, it's not a great matchup. There's not a great matchup against Cleveland in any phase of fantasy. So you switch over to Cleveland. What in the world is going on with Cleveland? They can't decide on a starting quarterback. And, well, even though Joe Flacco looked pretty decent, but I think it's one of those things where, a guy comes in, he looks decent, right? And then people get tape and look at it, and all of a sudden he won't look decent.
Nope.
And so, but they don't even know if he's going to start or not, because you got the guy that my friend Chase likes a lot, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I'm not never have been as big on him. And so hopefully you don't need either one of those guys in this game. So, but the good news is Amari Cooper is cleared. He will play today. And so Jacksonville is 25th against wide receivers. You want him in your starting lineup, no question about it. And so there's the answer to that. Baltimore, Lamar Jackson showed up late with an illness, but he will play. Tyler Higbee is doubtful, but you don't want him anyway. Tampa Bay, nothing to talk about there. Nothing to talk about Atlanta, really.
No.
Matt Hollins at wide receiver is questionable, but you don't want nowhere near your team. So the later games, Minnesota, this is the important news. We need to put some bright lights up right here, because Justin Jefferson returns to the field today and going up against the Raiders. And unbelievably enough to me, I heard people saying, well, he's just getting bagged. Should I put him in my starting lineup? Stop that. He's Justin Jefferson. He needs to be in your lineup. No question. He's one of the great wide receivers ever.
Ever.
And, and before, he was out, he was hampered with some things. He didn't look great, but don't overthink this. Justin Jefferson, put him in your starting lineup. If you got Jordan Addison, keep him in your starting lineup. It's going to help for him. Hawkinson in your starting lineup. So no questions there. And you have to put him in your lineup, don't you, Nate?
Oh, 100%. I mean, this is going to help the quarterback a lot as well. But, Jefferson going up against the Raiders defense, they have no top corners that we should be afraid of. So Jefferson, he waited until he was 100%, and he took the time to get healthy. So that's even
though he got criticized by not anybody that criticized him isn't a serious fantasy football person.
No, sir.
I'll just put it to you like that.
Yes,
okay.
Sir.
All right. So that brings me to the game that even though I'm a Seahawk guy, I got my Seahawks shirt on. I am not looking forward to this game. Geno Smith, as I mentioned earlier, may not play. And give me a break on lock, all right? You don't want him. Please don't do that. And Zach Charbonnet should play. Questionable. But is there anything to like on the Seahawks side of things going up against the 49ers?
I don't know. It's just with Geno being on, questionable, and even if he does play, just dealing with the injury as it is, it's only DK Metcalf to me. If Metcalf and Smith get it going early, yeah.
Unfortunately, I have Tyler Lockett. So I don't,
Oh man.
and he's another guy, right? You have him in your starting lineup, and he's okay.
He's okay.
Okay, he's not, he's not a slub or anything like that. But you put him on your bench, and all of a sudden he has 10 catches. But
Then you
I
start
don't
him, and
think
then it's,
that if you can get away with it, you don't want any of these guys in your starting lineup. Even DK, wide receiver 1, but you may have to play him. Just keep the expectations under control.
mm-hmm.
Okay, so Buffalo, Dawson Knox is back. So Dalton Kincaid, you still want him in your lineup?
I would, just for one more week until we actually see Knox kind of get things going again. Because even when Knox was on the field, Kincaid was still, kind of taking snaps away from him, or even just playing in a 2 tight end set. So I'll give it one more week. If Kincaid somehow falls off all of a sudden with Knox back, then I would bench him once the fantasy playoffs start. But for now, keep Kincaid in the starting lineup with Knox barely coming back.
Yeah, especially since Kansas City's 6th against tight ends, so you want to keep that under control. When you talk about Kansas City, though, unfortunately, Pachenko out. So the key question here: CEH, do you want him at all? I think I'd rather get ran over by a bunch of elephants than have him in my starting lineup. Do you trust him at all?
Against Buffalo, I understand it. If McKinnon is part of the rotation as well, but
Right.
McKinnon's more of a passing, specialist. If I have to, I will. I unfortunately have to with my my fans. It's the belly up league. I'm starting him. So yay. Yeah.
Yay. Hopefully you don't get trampled by the elephants I mentioned earlier. All right. So Denver, Samaje Perine should play. Mm-hmm. And he had a nice game, 55 yards and a touchdown against Denver a couple weeks ago. When we talk about the Clippers, geez. All right, the Chargers.
You good?
Yep. About basketball right now, okay? But Chargers, what in the world is going on with Austin Eckler?
For those of you who drafted him in the first round, they're probably regretting that right now.
You had to draft him in the top maybe 3 or 4 at the very least, I would think.
You go from that to hearing that Joshua Kelly might be getting a lot more carries, or maybe even starting at some point. That's not a good sign, because
no. He had 2.7 fantasy points last game.
Yeah.
And you should be able to shake your roster up. Whoever comes up on top will give you more than that. So Denver, however, is 32nd and dead last against running backs. So I think that you still have to continue running Austin Eckler out there until there's the wheels completely fall off, don't you think?
Yep. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I know he's been having a down year, but when you have a very, very favorable matchup against the Denver team that, like you mentioned, allows the most points to fantasy running backs, or most points to running backs fantasy-wise, until we hear that Kelly is the official starter for this team, you just got to roll with it and hope for the best that he figures it out.
Because if you miss the playoffs because you played Austin Eckler, you probably can live with that. But if you didn't play him and then miss the playoffs, then you'd be kicking yourself in your behind, I would think.
Yeah. I mean, at least you went down swinging compared to...
That's right. Go down swinging. And the last game of the day is probably the game that everyone's looking forward to, and that's, of course, the Eagles playing the Cowboys, about 30 miles from where I am right now. Oh. And so the big news out of this game, Dallas Goedert will play today against the Cowboys. And if there's a I know Seattle made the Cowboys defense, and they have some things to answer for after coming out of that game. And but if there's a weakness in that Cowboys team defense, it's against tight ends. So Dallas Goedert is, to me, a guy that you have to put, if he's playing, you have to put him in your lineup, because tight ends is pretty much, it's like I mentioned elephants earlier. The tight ends are pretty much, ground into to the dust by elephants every single week.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have Dallas Goedert, you have to play him. You agree?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I mean, Hurts has been struggling too from a passing standpoint these past few games, and so having Goddard back would be a huge help. And even when Goddard was healthy, he was rolling, like he was doing really good from a fantasy perspective, and he went down with the injury, and obviously, he was out. But yeah, against this Cowboys, it to me, it's going to be a decent shootout between the two. So I expect Goddard to put up a favorable amount of points in his first game back.
Okay, so I just saw an alert come across. Chris Olave is healthy and in the game, so we got that going on. So we ran through the games for today, and we can touch on the Monday because there's two of them. I don't understand why they do that either, and they play them at the same time.
At the same time,
so,
yeah.
So who in the world, are you supposed to switch back and forth? Is that the thing here?
I guess so. One's on ESPN and the other one's on ABC, I think. So it's like,
they're owned by the same company. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So we ran down the games today, and the first 1 o'clock where time begins, as I'm told. Are any games here that you're especially interested in a fantasy with a fantasy mindset?
I'm gonna go Lions and Bears. Justin Fields has a favorable matchup against the Lions defense that is kind of they're not the worst, but they allow one of the most or they are among the worst teams that allow fantasy points to quarterbacks. I don't know why it was hard for me to say that, but
okay.
I hope you guys get my drift.
Right.
But Justin Fields, he's a guy that I like, built there at quarterback. And he has a good matchup. And as for the Lions as well, when you have Amon-Ra St. Brown and you're set. I mean, it doesn't matter who the team is, what the matchup is. Amon-Ra St. Brown is matchup proof. He's just a guy that I really love. Jared Goff has been getting him the ball consistently, targeting him a lot. Yeah, we'll see what happens with this one. But I'm excited for Lions and Bears with Fields and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Hopefully both have a good game for my sake.
Okay, so if you're Chase or I, and as I mentioned earlier, because we have two quarterbacks. I'm not sure why, but we do. But Jordan Love is one of them, and Justin Fields is the other. Of those two guys, who would you put in your starting lineup this week?
I'm going Fields, and I promise you I'm not being biased. I promise you right now I'm not. I would have said Love if it wasn't for the fact that Christian Watson is going to be out Monday night.
That's right.
That's the thing. So I'm going with Fields, and Love has to have a bad game someday or at some time because he has a hot streak going, but he
does.
Hot streaks
he
always
had that
end.
just in time because other than that, people are like, well, should the Bears pick a quarterback next year? Or should the Packers pick a quarterback next year? And those two guys are answering the bell right now, which doesn't help, trying to decide who we're going to pick up, who you're going to put in your lineup. But Jordan Love has been on fire. And you mentioned Christian Watson out. And so I don't think there's a wrong answer here.
No, sir.
Both of those guys should be pretty set.
Yes, sir. I hope you don't mind me butting in real quick.
Okay.
For those of you who, like you mentioned earlier, Kevin, about Chris Olave, if you should start him, you definitely have to start him now. Taysom Hill is out. Apparently, he was just announced to be out. So
yeah, it's good because I just saw that come across too. So I no longer have to worry about whether I'm going to start Hill, so I can relax a little bit on that. So,
Me too.
I'm looking around, and I know this is a little self-serving, but the game I'm looking at is the one that I need, and that's Jacksonville at Cleveland, for the reason I just mentioned earlier. And if Trevor Lawrence plays, that's big. But he lost one of his weapons in that game. But that's Christian Kirk. He's on IR. Zay Jones, and stop me if you heard this before. He's questionable, and hopefully, I don't know. I haven't heard anything about since his arrest earlier, a couple, weeks ago, whatever that was. But don't know if he's going to play. But this is a big game for both teams, and Jacksonville, despite the fact that they're one of the top teams, their defense is not all that. So, what can Browning do? Because they're 30th against quarterback and 25th against wide receivers. So, if you got any of those two guys right there, Amari Cooper, you got Browning, those are two guys you're going to look at to get in your starting lineups. And so that's the game that I'm looking forward to here. Since I live in the Dallas area, it's not one of the games that are going to be on TV here, but I'm going to have to, make sure I monitor this and make sure that, in fact, Trevor Lawrence is in the starting lineup. Because then if I have him in my lineup and all of a sudden, he's not playing, then your whole team goes down the door.
Oh, of course.
Okay, so those are the early games that you and I are interested. How about the late games? So they never give us as many late games to pick from.
I mean, yeah, they should have put one of the Monday night games onto the Sunday afternoon slate, but I digress.
Okay, so we digress. So out of those games, which is the one you're looking forward to the most, fantasy-wise?
I would say Bills Chiefs, but I'm gonna go actually Vikings Raiders. You mentioned Jefferson being back. You pair that up with the fact that Devontae Adams is one of the best receivers in the league when he does get the football. So O'Connell, please just get him the ball. Those are two wideouts that that could put up a lot of points if they so choose. I mean, Josh Dobbs has a guy back that he can depend on wide receiver wise, and Jefferson. O'Connell with Adams too. Add in the fact that Josh Jacobs could put some points on the board as well against his Vikings defense that I believe isn't the best against the run. So
yeah, the Vikings defense against running backs is 6th. But as you mentioned, and when it comes to Josh Jacobs, you cannot do anything but put him in your starting lineup.
Oh, 100%. Yes, sir.
Doesn't matter, first, 6th, 32nd, whatever. Josh Jacobs is a guy you need in your starting lineup. And I'm going to double down on your selection here because I think that is a game. Because Dobbs, is he the guy who, thrilled everybody and he's an astrophysicist or, whatever and all that stuff? Comes out literally. The car pulls up to the Vikings training camp or facility. He gets out, walks into the facility, and all of a sudden he's in the starting lineup, leads them to win, and leads them to a win the next week. Or is he the guy who threw 4 interceptions?
Yeah, that's the thing. That's scary. But the 4 interception game against the Bears, it's with every fantasy quarterback that you have, it's always that one game where it's like, really, you put up those numbers, and I feel like that game against the Bears was for Dobbs. Like that was the game where it's like, okay, 4 interceptions. Should I bench him now? I wouldn't bench him if you had to start him. I'm just saying, when you have a plethora of weapons at your disposal with Hawkinson and Addison, he does, yeah, with Hawkinson and Addison,
absolutely. So as a football, fan, you mentioned Buffalo and Kansas City, and so that's a game that as you have to pay attention to, And but I think that Minnesota Raider game is where fantasy, people like us need to be paying attention to, because a lot of us have players in that game. And so,
including myself. Yeah.
including myself as well. So, as Buffalo, I don't really have any exposure. Well, no, because one dynasty league, I have, of course, the Buffalo quarterback, and it
Josh
doesn't
Allen.
matter, Allen. It doesn't matter what's going on the other side, because Kansas City's ranked 8th against quarterbacks. It does not matter. Josh Allen's in your starting lineup. Stop it. Don't think over it. You're starting him. But so I'm with you on the Raiders, and I'm with you on the Vikings, and so uh, so those are the games that we're looking forward to. So we can throw out, as we mentioned, 2 Monday night games, and so Aaron Jones, first of all, questionable. Then you've got Christian Watson, as you mentioned, is out.
Mhm.
Over here, and the Giants, I'm going to refer to you because you're the Giants guy. You have a show that comes out every week. So Paris Campbell questionable, Daniel Behringer questionable, Tyrod Taylor is back. Now, does any of that matter whatsoever?
Nope. That's all I gotta say. I don't want to.
Okay, that's that in-depth Giant
If you,
analysis that we're looking for right there.
if I could, I would rant about those three, but no. The short answer is no. There's no reason to. Taylor's gonna be. He's not the starter. Bellinger hasn't done much despite
No,
being
and I've
the tight
liked
end
him,
one.
and he just hasn't proven it, because I've got him on my taxi squad. He's been there for like 2 years now, and there's no reason to take. I might have to do it next year. I think that after their second year, they have to come off the taxi squad, and so I had Jordan Love parked over there for a long time, but and of course I activated him, but so when it comes to because Green Bay, they're at the Giants, right? And so they're 6.5 point favorites, as from what I've seen. Is there any reason why we should have any kind of encouragement about the Giants at all?
I mean, they just came off the bye. They won 2 straight before. As much as I hate to say it, there is a chance to the playoffs. There's motivation for this Giants team. They're at home to Green Bay. It's a favorable matchup because Christian Watson's out, Aaron Jones is questionable, and if he doesn't play, it's A.J. Dillon. The Giants' run defense, led by Dexter Lawrence, is it's pretty average. Like I know that Leonard Williams being traded to Seattle kind of hurt the run defense a little bit, but the Giants' run defense is good enough that they should be able to handle A.J. Dillon. It's a matter of just slowing down Jordan Love because he has the hot hand right now. I know earlier I was like, oh, every quarterback has that one bad game. Jordan Love hasn't had a bad game in like weeks.
It's been weeks and weeks. Yeah. So
if they can slow him down, the Giants have a chance because this offense is like this offense is sir, I don't know what to tell you with this offense. I don't have the words to describe it because it's just outside of Saquon Barkley it's
and not in a good way.
Yeah, 100%. Because because there's outside of Saquon Barkley, can you really depend on a Jalen Hyatt or a Wan'Dale Robinson for fantasy purposes? No, because
especially since it's a Monday night game.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because if they're your only resort for Monday night, because behind those two, Robinson and Hyatt, there's no other dependable wide receivers unless you're really desperate and you think Darius Slayton's going to save you in your fantasy matchup. There's really no.
Please don't think that.
No, please, get help if you do.
Yeah. All right. So as we mentioned, there are 2 games, and so the other game. Is there any reason for us to have any hope? Because Tennessee is a 13.5 point underdog to the Miami Dolphins at home.
At home, yep.
And Miami, their defense it's been looking better than it was earlier in the season. And so on Tennessee's side, is there anybody that they have that you're like, I got to have in my starting lineup?
I mean, you have to start Derrick Henry.
Derrick
You
Henry.
don't really have a choice because it is
No.
Derrick Henry. But that's the thing.
No.
What scares me is that even though it's a night game and the sun isn't going to be a factor, because you know about the whole on the opponent's sideline, the sun is like right at them and everything. But it's a night game, so it doesn't really matter. It's just the idea that if Miami gets off to a fast start, say 14-0 in the first quarter, you're not going to run the ball. You're going to throw it. And Derrick Henry isn't that type of receiving back, which kind of spells good for fantasy managers who have Tyjae Spears is their backup to Henry in Tennessee, and he's more of the passing back.
His pickup rate has increased significantly this past week, so that's something to keep in mind.
Definitely, but you have to start Henry. It's just you have to hope that the Titans defense kind of slows Miami down a little bit, so Henry can get those 20 carries and hopefully get a good amount of yardage and maybe score a touchdown or two.
Maybe so, but it's a bad matchup because Miami's fifth against running backs. But as you mentioned, he's Henry, so you got to have him in your starting lineup. And as far as Miami, you want any and all except for the tight ends. You don't want any other tight end. I couldn't even name you a tight end on the Miami Dolphins. And so, because Tennessee is 2 against tight end.
No.
Okay. The bad news for Tennessee, this is really bad news. They're 29th against wide receivers. So their wide, you know who they are. We're going to be running all over the place. And so Tua and all, start them,
start them all.
Start them all. Mostert, if he plays, I think that even if you have either one of those guys, you have to play him.
Mm-hmm.
And so hopefully, maybe you have some Miami players and you need a boost. And so Monday night will give you that boost, and it might get you into the playoff.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So those are the games right there. And so was there anything else that you wanted to bring up about in the fantasy realm? Anything about today or tomorrow?
Honestly, no, not really. Just one thing. Just for those of you out there, this is the last week of the fantasy regular season.
That's
right. It seemed like yesterday was the first week, and we were all so excited with our drafts and our starting lineups. And I hate to say it, but time goes by so fast, and now we're already at the last week of the regular season, and we're preparing for playoffs. Well, not me, because the Belly Up Fantasy League, 3-10 is nothing to be happy about. So
no, we're barely 500, and I'm not doing any dances over that either. So, but as I mentioned, though, this is not some league that just a bunch of guys came in off the cornfields and started playing. These are all guys that have shows of their own, including yourself.
Yes, sir.
And guys that people look to for fantasy advice.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not a surprise that there are so many of us bunched up together. There's no clear team going into this playoff. So just might mention that Belly Up Fantasy is a place that you can look to. And I've been, people sit there and say, hey, where can I get some fantasy content? Right here. There's no need to look anywhere else. And I might mention, too, that there's no need to pay for any kind of football fantasy advice in any sport, really. But you can get that right here. You can get that from you, Nathan. You can get that from all these different shows. Operation Domination. Almost every night, there's some sort of show on the Belly Up Fantasy Network that will give you the information you need. So there we have that. And so Nathan, as I mentioned, you're all over the place. But if someone was to say, "Man, I got to check into this guy," where could they find him?
Yes, sir. So the podcast Backup to the Backup is on Spotify and YouTube. So you can check us out there. You can follow me on Twitter, Nathan_Nguyen24. Usually, whenever a show or whenever we go live or whenever an episode is posted, always find it on my Twitter. X, I guess it's called X. Yeah, X, not Twitter, but we still call it Twitter. So you can find it. Find
Yeah,
me there.
you know what? I usually call it X Twitter. So either way, you're covered.
It works. Whatever works for.
It works.
Exactly, whatever works. But you can find us there. Articles I write come out every week. I try to do it daily, but it's a bit tough because really there's no Giants content to write about on a daily basis. But so I got to hopefully broaden my horizons. But you can find me on bellyupsports.com with the articles that I write, mostly about the NFL right now. Probably once the NFL dies down, we'll shift towards the basketball world. But mostly you can find me there on bellyupsports.com. But yeah, Backup to the Backup podcast on YouTube and Spotify. Talk NFL every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Well, we sprinkle in some other sports here and there. But before we go, Kevin, I do want to ask you. I know this is a fantasy football thing.
Okay.
And I know from past conversations with you, and of course the I guess flag behind you that you're Dodgers. You're a Dodgers fan, and you being one of the more the knowledgeable men in the Belly Up Sports company, you must have been very ecstatic about Shohei Ohtani signing yesterday. Am I correct?
I was, ever since even before this last season started, I suspected that he would go to the Dodgers. I didn't think that he'd go to the Dodgers, and it looks like he's getting $200 million over what any other team was willing to give him. And so I'm astounded by the fact that he got that amount of money. And so and also I've seen that people came down hard on the Angels for not trading him when they could. I predicted that they would not. Okay. Because that would be a PR disaster of the highest order for them to trade him. And if he decides to go, which he did, obviously, hey, we did everything we could to keep him. And so you could be pretty sure at some point there's going to have to be an article come out about this. And I'm a fantasy guy, and I was just about ready to do an article about Juan Soto going to the Yankees, right? And so I decided yesterday to do a story about the starters and injury updates, which we have gone through right here. But you can go to Develop Fantasy Sports and read that article if you like. But there's going to have to be an article written about how this affects his fantasy prospects. And he won't pitch next year. And so he is no longer the number one, got to have player. Top 10, okay, I can buy that. But he's no longer the number one overall pick because he's not pitching. And so there's an article I'm sure that will be coming out at some point about that. So I am happy that he's on the Dodgers. I'm not too sure how I feel about $700 million. And I'm not sure how, the Dodgers need pitching in a major way. And where are they going to find the money for that? I guess, they're the Dodgers, they have money. But they've accomplished one thing, and all that to do about Toronto the other day was amazing to me. Yeah. And I even said it publicly. Until he says it publicly, I'm not going to believe it. So, and I really didn't understand why he had such a tight lip on this whole proceeding. I'm glad it's over with. So now we can move on to, actual analysis of this.
Definitely. I mean, Yeah, now that his signing is over with, well, I mean, pending a physical, it doesn't even matter, to be honest. I'm just excited for the fact that I think because this signing was already, that this signing is completed, that other players are gonna start signing with teams now. I mean, we've seen a few
Right,
players get signed already, but like more and more players will be
right.
on
More and more
teams
players
eventually.
of consequence will now start signing with teams,
Mhm.
and everybody can stop being kissy lovey dovey against Otani, you know, and it was rumored that he might even come to the Rangers, which I knew that was nonsense, and because he wasn't going to me, he wasn't going anywhere but the West Coast, and
Yeah.
Toronto made no sense to me whatsoever, and so the big windy road is now we're off the yellow brick road. We found the destination. So as I said, because baseball is my first love, always has been,
Mhm.
and so you can be sure that I'll be discussing this further as we get closer to the baseball season.
We'll
All
be
right,
excited for
so
it.
yeah, me too. And so as I mentioned, you can find I went kind of crazy this week. I've got 3 articles currently on the Belly Up Fantasy website right now. Um, I wrote an article about fantasy basketball hook pickups that's sitting there, and I wrote an article about the Thursday start, sit, which Thursday's over with now, but the injuries articles there. You can always go to the Belly Up Fantasy website. Just click on my name, and you got a whole smorgasbord of articles there. And you can always find me at Twitter at Kevin62 WILSEA. And so there I am. And I might mention too, because Mike, the co-founder of Belly Up, came out and said that tomorrow there's going to be apparently a college bowl pre look at things,
Mhm.
and so that's going to be tomorrow. So you can look forward to that. And the only thing I'll put out there is I thought I'm not a FS. I'm a Clemson guy. Okay. All right. So I am contractually obligated to hate FSU, but they got hope. So that's all I'll say about that. And so Nathan, any other comments you want to make?
No, sir. Just good luck to with your matchup, sir. And
Yeah, same to you.
yeah, no, I'm good. Nah, we good. We'll keep the losing streak going. At least I'll have some sort of streak going because I'm projected to lose by like 20, and that's with Patrick Mahomes and Devontae Adams in the starting lineup. Like it's rough going over here. So I'm already looking forward to next season already. So
Okay.
I
Sometimes
appreciate the
that's
good
all
luck.
you
But
can do is just
yeah,
say, white flag. That's it.
yes, sir.
All
Just gotta
right.
wave it.
So, all right. So everybody out there, have a great week this week, and next week Chase will be back in the fold, and we'll find out how things went on his little vacation. And I will be out on. I'll be going out this week. So, but I will be on the show, and so you can look forward to that next week. And other than that, that's all we got. And we appreciate you watching. Everybody have a great day.